So where exactly do you go to buy tech in Colombia? Hi all, I'm Israel and you're watching my travel channel where I talk all things Colombia. So during my time living in Colombia, there have been several occasions where I've been out shopping for a variety of technology such as video games and peripherals, PC parts, a phone, a TV, and even camera servicing. Throughout my experiences, I've gradually learned that Colombia's tech market is very different to what I've seen in my home country, and probably most other Western countries. If you're a bit of a tech head like me, then I think this is something that's important to realize before coming, as it's quite likely to catch you off guard. For me at least, I came to Colombia with a bunch of preconceived notions of what I thought the tech market must be like globally, but I soon realized that a lot of these ideas I had just came from what I've experienced in Australia and heard about in the US. I honestly took this for granted and never really questioned it, so when coming to Colombia for the first time, I was in for a bit of a rude awakening. It turns out that a lot of those things I was used to seeing in Australia either don't exist or don't quite function the same way in Colombia. That's why I thought it would be helpful to describe some of these differences so that you know what to expect and how to effectively go about buying tech in the country. Alright, so to begin with, one of the main differences I noticed about the tech market in Colombia is that there aren't nearly as many tech store chains, and the ones that do exist aren't nearly as widespread. Here in Australia, we've got a handful of dedicated tech chains like JB Hi-Fi, Harvey Norman, Bing Lee, Jcar, EB Games, and more, and the majority of them can be found all over the country, often with several stores in each city. If you're from the US, the UK, or another developed country, I'm guessing it's a similar case for you, and thanks to this, you probably don't have to search around a bunch when you need to buy any piece of tech. You know, maybe you check a few stores just to compare the prices, but the idea of traveling far and wide to track something down that's hard to come by, probably not a regular occurrence. Most of the time, there's going to be a store not far from you that has what you want, if not multiple stores. In Colombia though, it's a different story. Most of the tech stores you see in Colombia are not big chains, but rather smaller independent businesses with only a single store, sometimes a handful. You'll typically find these stores in shopping malls and they tend to be fairly small, so don't expect to see big items like TVs being sold here, as they mostly sell smaller products like phone accessories and video games. So yeah, clearly quite different to what you might be used to at home. In Colombia, I can really only think of one big national electronics store chain, K-Tronix, but outside of that, the vast majority of these stores are just small businesses. That mightn't be an issue if K-Tronix was like the Walmart of tech stores and you didn't need to shop anywhere else, but it's unfortunately not. For any Aussie viewers, I'd equate it more to Harvey Norman than say JB Hi-Fi, in that it's not quite as comprehensive in its product range. Yes, some of their stores are larger than others, but the mega stores are few and far between, and so most of the time, you won't have the luxury of visiting one of those. Now you might say, okay, so it's like Harvey Norman, not the end of the world, you know, there's still a decent range there for a lot of what I want, right? And yes, it's true that their product range is kind of similar. Both sell laptops, phones, TVs, cameras, a small selection of video games, and some electric appliances like fridges and washing machines, so what's the big deal? Well, the thing is with both of these stores is they're not as likely to have the brand or the model that you want. If you're a tech head like me, then there's a good chance that you know exactly the phone or the laptop or the TV that you want to buy before stepping foot into a store. Stores like K-Tronix though are arguably more suited to people who don't know the exact model they want and are happy to just look around and choose something from the store's smaller range. For instance, let's say I wanted to buy the phone I have at K-Tronix, the Google Pixel 7 Pro. Well, too bad, they don't sell it. Okay, so what about my laptop, the Dell XPS 15? No, they don't sell that either. Alright, what about something seemingly more common like these Google Pixel Pro earbuds, or heck, even Sony's flagship OLED TV? Sadly, it's the same story. Now, to be fair, this isn't entirely K-Tronix's fault, as none of these items are sold in Colombia at all, but at the same time, if anyone's gonna start importing them, it's gonna be K-Tronix, as they're by far the country's largest tech chain, if not the only big tech chain. So the fact that they don't means that these items are gonna be hard to come by, as it's unlikely anyone else will pick up the slack. I mean, I suppose a lot of the time it's up to the brands themselves to decide if they want to have a wholesale warehouse in any given country, and if they don't, that obviously affects the retailer's ability to sell it at the recommended retail price, but I mean, selling products at a marked up price to compensate is still a lot better than not selling them at all. Even if it means just getting them in smaller quantities, that's still better than nothing. Whatever the case though, this is sadly the way it is, so just be prepared to not have the same amount of choice you might get at home. It's not like the market's devoid of the most popular brands. Like, when it comes to phones for instance, you could still buy stuff from Samsung and Apple, but when it comes to a lot of the other players like Google, you're probably out of luck. In their place, you'll typically find a bunch of cheaper and smaller brands, some of which are exclusive to Colombia or Latin America. This applies not only to phones, but also TVs and really most of the consumer level tech you'd think of. The key words there though are consumer level, as when it comes to prosumer, or anything a notch higher, I have found there to be a much better range. For example, if you're looking for parts to build a PC, Colombia does seem to have a good amount of choice for this, or at least Bogotá does. See, in Bogotá, there are actually 2 shopping centres side by side in La Zona G neighbourhood that are specifically dedicated to technology. I'm talking about Unilago and Centro de Alta Tecnología. Whilst you might find more specialised tech stores scattered throughout the city, these shopping centres are really convenient as they have dozens upon dozens of these stores all in the one place, so you can easily shop around without having to travel far and wide. These shopping centres are by no means huge, but the shops are fairly small, so they're able to pack a lot in. As mentioned, you'll find a lot of options for any PC parts you might be after here, but also for those of you who aren't in the market for this, there are also quite a handful of phone accessory stores and shops full of other miscellaneous items like cables and whatnot. A lot of these stores are also able to help you with repairs and servicing for any tech you may own, regardless of whether you bought it from them or not. I personally had my camera sensor cleaned by a store here, but I've also seen shops that'll clean and service laptops and PCs, along with many that'll fix broken phone screens. Just bear in mind that for any fixes that require replacing parts, they'll only be able to help if they happen to have replacement parts on hand or can order them in, and if you have an item that isn't sold in Colombia, the chances of this are low. I remember with my last phone asking if they could fix its broken screen for instance, but they couldn't because it was a Google Pixel 5, and they didn't have any replacement screens since it's not a product sold anywhere in the country. So yeah, replacing proprietary parts isn't always an option, but you can only ask, and if it's just the clean you need, most of the time this can be done. Now, although I haven't personally seen it, it wouldn't surprise me if there was an equivalent shopping centre dedicated to tech in Medellin as well, and maybe even some of the other larger cities, but I can only speak for Bogotá as I haven't extensively looked for it anywhere else. Anyway, I've talked about K-Tronix and some of these smaller stores, but there's actually a third popular option for buying tech, and that is department stores. Just as you may see in your home country, most of Colombia's department stores have a dedicated technology section that'll sell things like TVs, phones, appliances, video games and consoles, and sometimes even laptops. Once again, don't expect extensive range here, but it's another option nonetheless, and there tend to be more of these department stores in every city than there are K-Tronix stores. Just to name these stores real quick, there's Éxito, Olímpica, Jumbo, Falabella, and maybe some others I'm forgetting. Being department stores, I'm sure you can imagine the kind of tech sold here. You know, it's mostly the really popular stuff like TVs, phones, and video games. Basically the kind of thing anyone would buy rather than just techies like me. If you're from Australia, I'd put this on par with the tech sections of like Kmart, Big W, and Target. So yeah, those are pretty much all the places you go to buy tech in Colombia, but there were a couple more things I wanted to point out about the tech market in general that are a little different to a lot of other countries. I already mentioned that not all brands have a presence in Colombia, and so there are a bunch of product models that just don't exist at all. The other thing I'd say on this though is that for brands that do have a presence, their flagship models often won't arrive in the country on their international release date. With the exception of maybe big brand phones, it's not uncommon to have to wait several weeks or even months before a new product reaches Colombia. I noticed this especially with TVs, that the models on display were often from the previous generation rather than the current generation. This delay applies to a lot of other things too, like video games. A couple of years ago, for instance, I went to a game store in Manizales with the intention of buying Horizon Forbidden West on its release date, but I was told at the store that they'd have to order it in especially for me, and that it would take several weeks to arrive. If no one asked for it, I'd imagine it would be even longer before it hit their shelves. In short, day one releases for the vast majority of products just don't seem to be a thing in Colombia, never mind midnight releases, which I doubt is even a known concept. Speaking of foreign concepts, the other thing you should be aware of is that neither price bargaining nor price matching are allowed in any major store's policy. Once again, coming from Australia, I'm very used to going to JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman, or almost any store that sells tech, and finding a product that's just a bit more expensive than what it's being sold for in competing stores. To avoid having to travel to the store where it's cheaper, I just ask an attendant if they can price match it for me, and it's never a problem at all. Heck, a lot of these stores even advertise this policy, actively encouraging it. In Colombia, on the other hand, I learnt the hard way once that people will get borderline offended if you ask them to price match a product. Now you might think, okay, so what, you have to travel to a store where it's cheaper, big deal. But see, the issue here that I've often run into is that the product being sold at a cheaper price is only available in another city. Even if it's a big department store chain like Éxito that's selling it, who also have stores in the city that I'm in, their product range will often differ from store to store, and if I'm in a smaller city like Manizales, there's a high chance that their Manizales stores aren't going to have the same range as, say, their stores in Bogotá. See, in my instance, I was at a Falabella store in Manizales, and I had found a TV I wanted, but I saw on Éxito's website that they were selling the same TV for less. I showed a store person the listing, but they refused to price match it, so I decided to go over to an Éxito store in Manizales, and was told by the store person there that none of the Éxito stores in the city had this TV available. Basically, this meant that my only option would have been to pay the higher price at Falabella unless I ordered it online, which isn't easy to do when you don't have a permanent shipping address in the country. It goes without saying that it's the same story for price bargaining. If you see something that looks more expensive than it should be, don't expect to be able to haggle, as this just isn't part of the store policies in Colombia. Anyway, I don't mean to be a negative Nancy with all this, just telling you how it is so you go in with the right expectations to avoid disappointment. Now, I was also going to unpack specifically the video games market in Colombia a little more, as again, it's quite different to a lot of other countries, but to be honest, I think that warrants its own video as there's a bit to talk about, so I'll wrap this one up here. I hope you feel a little more equipped with this knowledge, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. As always, you're also welcome to suggest a video topic you'd like to see me cover, and I'll definitely consider it. Otherwise, like, subscribe, bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!